I'm Tracy Koga with something short and fun. This is a Hue Soundbite. Well, I am thoroughly excited because, Rochelle, you are the very first guest in person on our Hue at Home set. So welcome in real life and in real time. I know that we've done a lot of virtual conversations, but I wanted to really invite you here because a lot not only has happened to you in the political ring, but also through your own personal life too. So I really want to reflect on that and how I guess things are with you now, because it's always interesting to see how someone handles all of the ups and downs and the turns and twists that life takes you. So congratulations, not only are you Minister of Families, but also the Deputy Premier. So my question is, what does the Deputy Premier all do?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here in your lovely studio, and congratulations on successfully keeping your company and your show going through a very challenging time that so many people have been experiencing in our province and around the world. And it's just so great to see entrepreneurial women like yourself succeed. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
It's been a really exciting summer. And I've been very honored to be part of a conversation that I think more women need to be a part of. Ever since I got into politics and ever since I've been elected, I've tried to use my platform as much as possible to really champion women in politics and other industries and sectors that are perhaps not dominated by women, and in fact are not even close to achieving parity. And politics is certainly one of those sectors. I've said it before, but it certainly bears repeating. When I got elected, I was the 60th woman in the province's history to ever hold office in the Manitoba legislature, in comparison to a roughly 800 men who have been elected to the legislature. So we've got a significant imbalance. And then it gets even smaller when you think about how many women have actually sat around the cabinet table, women who have crafted and drafted and debated the laws and the regulations that really provide the foundation for our society. And that number is even smaller. I believe it's about 33, or when I was appointed to cabinet, it was about that number. And so we're really seeing that the realm of politics in general has been male dominated, and it continues to be. Right now, of course, we're in an election federally, and we're seeing a lot of women on the ballot, and we're seeing some women in leadership positions as well. But it's minor in comparison to the number of men that we're seeing on the ballot and the number of men that we're seeing in the leadership positions, leading major parties in the country. And so I'm always excited to be part of a conversation and to just champion not only my own career, but for all of those other women and people who may not feel that their voices are reflected in that general conversation. So I was really honored to be considered and asked to consider running in the leadership contest that is currently underway to replace former Premier Brian Pallister, and to become the new leader of the PC Party of Manitoba, as well as the Premier of the province. And incredibly humbled to be in a position where I had such support to run in that capacity. And I will always carry with me that support and that just overwhelming sense of gratitude for the path that I'm on and the people that have made it so for me. And but ultimately I made the decision not to seek the leadership. It wasn't the right time for me, for a variety of reasons. And I think it's important as women that we listen to and respect that natural calling, and that knowing when it's the right time, and maybe not trying to force things that just don't fit. And so for me, it was very clear what my heart was telling me. It wasn't the time for me. But I am super excited about the fact that there are other leading women in this race, and that there's a lot of conversation about the women who are seeking the leadership. And so I'm just so thrilled to be working in with this group of talented women, and seeing this very exciting turn of events for the PC Party of Manitoba, because this is the first time in the party's history that we've had not one but two women who are seeking the top job. So that's incredibly exciting. After I decided not to seek the leadership, and we had an interim premier appointed in Calvin Gertson, he'd asked if I would serve as his deputy. And what an honor that was. And Calvin is somebody that I have tremendous respect for. And he and I we have a long history together. And I think we balance one another out quite significantly because, he's rural, I'm urban, obviously he's male, I'm female. He's comes from a very conservative background, and I am certainly more on the progressive side in that conservative tent. And so we really do balance one another out quite nicely, and it's an honor to serve in that capacity. And that was a little over a week ago.
I know.
And so learning what the role of the deputy premier is still a work in progress, but it's an exciting journey for sure.
Well, we're so excited for you. So I am going to open it up to our beautiful Hue Chat Room. I've got Charlotte, Rana, and Aly here. So we heard a little bit about Rochelle's journey in this last little while. It's pretty crazy, but I mean, all power to women, I think. What about you, Rana?
Hi, Rochelle. So good to see you. Congratulations.
Hi, Rana.
No, and I appreciate your words because they're absolutely very powerful. And for everyone, before I ask a question, Rochelle's support is actually completely transcends all parties. I know for a fact for myself, I know that she's been an amazing source of support, an amazing ear. And I know that I even had messaged her and said, I hope that you're ready for leadership, because I just think you're an incredible friend, and you're just an incredible example of the type of leadership and the type of support once women rise to that position, how much that support means to people. But I'm just really curious, first off, I think it's just and I think Tracy touched upon it a little bit. Can you talk more about, just your thought process when you were deciding, okay, this is not the time for me to run in this leadership. And, I definitely acknowledge, Heather and Shelley as well for putting their names forward. It's really amazing to see. But I was so curious about you, and as somebody who was like, I wonder if she's going to do it. I was so curious to see, what was your thought process? And I think, the answer is probably going to be quite powerful for a lot of women who are either jumping into an election at any level. But, I think that we all probably have very similar thought conversations in our head before we jump into something. So that's kind of my question for you today.
So I really believe in always listening to your heart and your gut, and giving that the priority in our lives when making big decisions. And that was a shift for me when I was younger and more junior in my career. I would always go around and ask people, what do you think I should do? Do you think I should take this job, or do you think I should do this, or do you think I should do that? And when we do that, it can create a lot of confusion, and it creates a reliance on other people's opinion. And I'm very fortunate and very privileged to be in a position today where I've learned to trust my inner voice, and I've learned to listen to that inner voice. And I've always been someone who is intuitive and very goal orientated. And I think, what are my goals that I want to accomplish right here, right now? And I feel very strongly about some of the issues that have been really brought to the forefront in this pandemic, and that's dealing with trauma, dealing with mental illness, dealing with the core of some of addictions and other untreated trauma, and really opening up a dialogue about sexual violence and those ongoing impacts on not just the individual but on society. So that's what I'm most passionate about right now. And my job in the Department of Families is really allowing me to have those conversations with people who can make a difference. And so I don't want to give that up. I love working in the Department of Families. I was only appointed on January the 5th, and I'm just doing some of that work right now that is leading me into a place that excites me a lot. And my voice was just telling me, stay the course. There's work that I have to do in families. There's ways for me to contribute where I'm at and to expand upon that. And so that was really what led to my decision to not enter the leadership race, which I know really requires a focus on a variety of issues in the province. And our province is in such a unique position, but a very dire position that requires solid leadership with somebody who is going to show up every day dedicated to not just these specific issues that I've highlighted, but myriad issues that are going to require attention. What are we doing with our education system? How are we getting our kids back on track? What are we doing in healthcare? How are we going to enhance ICU capacity? And how are we going to really address the fiscal situation that we find ourselves in, and so many other important initiatives that I'm excited to support. And to see a good number. There's 3 people to my knowledge right now that are seeking the leadership, that are willing to put in that focus and have that overview, that broad focus, and allows me to continue with my very specific heart-led focus.
Yes, and it is a learning process too, right? I mean, you learn from others. So definitely, you know now that Rochelle is very passionate. And I guess that's the reason why she didn't step up. But Charlotte now, she talked a lot about things that touch your, ring true to your heart: addictions, mental health, mental well-being, family. What do you have to say?
You know what? It's so much that Rochelle was saying was just resonating with me, because I spent all of my time working with families and supporting them with their mental health. And congratulations on your deputy minister. I mean, that is awesome. Way to go. Or deputy premier, excuse me. Girl power all the way. But my first question for you, Rochelle, today is really focusing on, your statistics. You're talking about 60 women have only held, office in Manitoba and 800 men. There's so few of you, and when I say that, women in office. I'm all about peer support, and I'm just wondering, what do you do and what to support all the other women at the ledge, like, holding offices? I'm just wondering what that looks like for you as well as the other women.
Oh, that's certainly a great question, and one that I think about a lot. And I love to see when we have younger female employees coming into the legislature, whether they're coming in as interns or employees. I think what's so important is that we create an environment that is respectful and harassment-free and conducive to career laddering. And so I try to do that in every circumstance that I can, and as well as being a peer support for my colleagues right now that are in the legislature. And one of the things that I find very unique is that sort of collegial environment extends beyond party lines. And Rana and I have had conversations about this before, where I consider Rana a good friend, and I consider people who are certainly not affiliated with the party that I'm associated with to be good friends. And I love that about where I'm at in life and where these amazing women are that I get to work with are in life. And I think that being able to go beyond party lines or go beyond ideology and just really focus on humanity and focus on our common goal of raising awareness and creating a platform and a voice for people who have been marginalized, whether that's because of their gender or their sexual orientation or their race. Those are issues that we need to break down those barriers and build a more inclusive society. And I'm just thrilled to have those conversations with people and to count among my friends people who are wanting to be on that same journey where we're just breaking barriers and getting stuff done together.
So it is a good time for women in power at the ledge, or
it's a good time in respect of our history. So if you go back 20 years, there wasn't, even 10 years, there wasn't anti-harassment policies that exist today. Those are relatively new. If you go back 30 years, there weren't a gender diverse group. You would walk into a minister's office and the only women that would be in the office would be perhaps not the decision makers. And I would never want to disparage any of those roles. I've had those roles myself, and they're wonderful, and they offer an opportunity, great opportunities. But we know women need to be at that decision-making table as well. And like I said, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have found as many women at those decision-making tables, and certainly not 30 or 40 years ago. So it's a good time, relatively speaking. There are challenges, and I know Rana and I have talked about that, and I know Rana's spoken publicly about those challenges, where when you're a woman and you put yourself out there, there are certainly unintended consequences and things that we may have to deal with that others don't. I fortunately am so incredibly privileged that I have probably not have to deal with things to the extent that I know Rana's spoken to. Does that mean things have gotten better in the last 6 or 7 years since Rana was in a leadership position? I'd like to think so, because since then and now we've had that Me Too movement. We've had awareness. We've shone a spotlight on that dirt and that sewer that can sometimes just take over certain social media platforms, and we're calling it out. And so I think there's less of it, but I'd be very interested to hear if the panel agrees with me that there's less of that today than there was 5 years ago.
all right, Aly, you can be first up.
So first of all, congratulations. I have to thank you on a general level, and then again on a personal level, because I did my internship, and I did my internship with you. So I have never felt so supported and encouraged and inspired through that. And I have to say, since I got really into politics, just after university, I haven't seen such a clear area and such an area where I could feel comfortable. Say if something happened to me when I was doing my internship or something happened to another individual, I've never had a second thought that I wouldn't be able to approach somebody about it. Whereas I'm not too sure that would be the case 5 years ago. And right now, I think more than ever, not only to go to another woman, but to also be able to go to another man in office and be able to speak about it. I think that's so much more common right now, and more available and more comforting now than it would have been 5 years ago. So I have to say, I think so, and I definitely agree, but that's just coming from my own standpoint.
And do you have a question, Aly, for Rochelle?
I do. So, I think a lot of times people think that politics is something that you're either coming down from another family member, or you're taking on leadership because it's so big in your family and it's so talked about. Whereas you talk about grassroots issues and you talk about your own personal life and your lived experience. So I kind of wonder what you would tell a young woman, maybe like myself, who's had lived experience in issues, like mental illness and like sexual violence. What would you tell them, and how important it is to bring these issues and this experience into office?
Well, that's a great question. And I'll never forget about a decade ago when I was at the bank renewing my mortgage with my husband. And I was seeking office for the first time. I believe I was a declared candidate, but I didn't hold office. And I was just chatting with the lady, and she said, I once thought about running in politics, but I'm divorced, and I just don't think that would be something that would be acceptable. And I was taken aback about that, because I believe that we need to make space for all different families and all different walks of life and all different experiences. And I've just always been somebody that leads with my heart and speaks what's on my mind, and not turn from my past. And I think when we try to deny ourselves, that's where trauma continues to live on. And so I made a conscious decision when I got elected to be true to who I am, and not worry about the consequences. Like, if I talk about the fact that I'm a survivor of sexual violence, is that going to make me less electable? If I talk about my struggles as a mom and as a wife, and I have a blended family, my husband and I were both we both have previous marriages, and we came together 13 years ago, pardon me, and we have 5 children. And a blended family is very complex. And I thought, if I can't talk about my experiences in a second marriage and in a blended family, then, because if that makes me unelectable, I don't buy that. And if I talk about the fact that I have had depression in the past, and I have had struggles with my mental health, and that these are the things that I have to do on a regular basis to maintain my good mental health. I don't think that those things make us unelectable. I think they make us better suited for office. And I think we should come to office as our true, genuine selves, because we're representing a diverse community. And I take that into consideration on a regular basis. I represent 22,000 people right here in Riel, and everybody has different experiences. And so I think the fact that I'm open about my various, my different experiences makes me more relatable, or at least I would hope that my constituents would feel that.
Well, and as you're just a perfect example of, once you share your story, the ball starts to roll, and people say, oh, that happened to me, or oh, I've been feeling like that. And it just becomes easier for the conversation to start. Ron, I'm going to go back to you and get your thoughts on that other comment that Rochelle made when I asked, so is it a good time for women?
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's interesting for me because I'm watching, so I'm kind of on the outside looking in, and there are things that we should find very encouraging, and some of those things are, the fact that there are so many women supporting other women, and I can see it. I can see it being out of it. That I still see it, and I've been on enough panels and enough conversations with various elected officials that you could kind of see it, and that was definitely not something that was available 5 years ago. Like, it just was, everything was kind of under the rug. It was a sign of weakness to reach out. You were told constantly to not be authentic, act this way. And I don't see that. And I think that those are really important things to acknowledge, because that means we have been moving further, and we are moving kind of, it's slow and steady, but it's completely not what it was 5 years ago. And like Rochelle said, when you start shining a light on these awful, you know, attacks, or whether it's like emotional or verbal or social media or sexual or whatever it is, once you start shining a light on that and people are able to speak their truth, you know, it's empowering. So I can see that empowerment in a lot of the women who are elected right now. Obviously, there's a long way to go. We all recognize that. We all acknowledge that. Everyone keeps working towards it. But just to answer that question, you know, and I think that we have to give credit to those women who are sitting in those elected positions, because they are totally breaking that mold. So they've walked in, and they have changed that narrative themselves, against all odds. So I think that any woman who's been elected in those positions, like in the last two elections, I think that they deserve like for sure like an applaud and an acknowledgement, because you know, for people like me who have shied away from it just out of fear, like literally crippling fear, I'm not scared anymore. Like I would definitely not be afraid anymore. I would be like, all right, let's do this, right? And feel confident and know that I could just be me, you know, and that's pretty empowering. It's pretty impressive. So that's, you know, it's exciting. It's good stuff.
Oh, it is. Charlotte, Rochelle was talking a lot about the things that she felt strongly about, and, you know, especially sharing her story, she thought that was really important. Is that important to you as a candidate? When you look at the candidates there, are you looking for someone that has all of this rhetoric and their programs and they're going to do this and that? Or is it someone that maybe shares a little bit of personality or a personal story?
You know, I have a lot of respect for Rochelle coming forward and sharing bits of her life and her story. Just bringing that up, and it's that part around, you know, people hearing your story and seeing where you've come, and they're thinking, hey, I can do it too. So thank you for that, but also for personalizing it and saying, hey, you know, these are some of the things that are passionate to me because this was part of, you know, my story. And the impact it had on my life. So I thank you for that as well. Is it important for candidates to address that? I think so. I really do. I think it allows you to see the realness of a person and what's inside. Rochelle, you talked a lot about trusting your gut or your inner voice, and that's what I do too. So when I see candidates who are just there's nothing there, you know, I wonder, you know, what else is there, are they not telling? So you know, I'm really paying attention to what others are saying in this election, like the other three candidates, to make my decision, because I am a conservative, I will say that. I just think that if you keep, I'm glad you're still in families. I'm glad you've got your passions and your projects ahead of you. They align with a lot of things that are important to me too. So I think there is a reason why you're still in office in the Department of Families. I'm glad that you're tackling some of the mental health, because I was scared it was all going to end up in that one side. But it's families, there's just so much going on with families, and everything has to do with mental health if you think about it. So it just can't be one department. So I'm glad that you're tackling that as well too. And I think there'll be another time for you to make a choice down the road, but I'm pleased where you are right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Aly, you're a big proponent and advocate for human rights. So, moving into this election, this federal election, I mean, I guess it is mentioned, but I don't think it's really mentioned enough. How important is that for you?
I think it's incredibly important. I mean, it's important every day, all the time, every year, regardless if there's an election happening. But I think when there is an election happening and when leadership needs to be shown, I think more than ever, especially after these couple of years that we've had that have just been so disheartening for many people, I think it's incredibly important to have these at a forefront. So I know a lot of people right away go to, what are we going to do for the bigger things, right? The economy in certain different areas. But it's so important to have that level of humanity, even just for yourself, and giving people that level of comfort too. And I just have to say, I mean, for myself, I speak very candid about my own mental health and my own life. And I've had many people say to me, you know, one day you're going to run in politics and this is all going to be dirty laundry. But again, to what Rochelle was saying, I don't think that makes you unelectable. I think it actually makes you so much um, more electable. And for myself too. So human rights need to be at a forefront. And a lot of people will say it shouldn't be something that government should be meddling in. But when it really comes down to that, at the end of the day, it makes you more of a human, and it makes you more of somebody who's personable instead of just a commercial, instead of somebody who's just reading what they want to hear. It makes you more of an individual. So it's incredibly important for me.
Oh. Now, is there anything else that you want to ask Rochelle? Any of the ladies?
If I could just add one thing to what Aly was saying, and congratulations, Aly, for everything that you're doing, and just such an impressive young lady. And I have no doubt that someday you'll run for office and make a great elected leader. One of the conversations that I don't think is happening often enough is how we've got this centralization of power, whether it be in the House of Commons or in legislatures all throughout the country, where we see power is really concentrated at that upper level. And it's really important. I would say it's more important than ever to be looking for candidates who are willing to challenge status quo and to make statements, whether that be behind closed doors, which is often the most preferred route when you're in government, to have those arguments behind closed doors, or make them public when necessary, but to always remember that you're representing your constituents and that you're working for your constituents. And it's really easy, I would say, to get lost in the House of Commons or to get lost in the legislature and think that you're, and to get disconnected with your constituents and to really feel stifled by that concentration of power and to forget that you have a voice. And I think it's so important that we remind all of our candidates, or look for candidates who are willing to always remember that they have a voice and to always remember what's at stake. That when they're sitting around that table, they're not there to always agree with the position that's being presented. They're there to advocate for their community. And that's one of the things that I try to hold dear and try to have that as a guiding principle for myself, and something that I recommend for anyone else who's getting into politics to be mindful who's the real boss, and that's our constituents, and to have that voice. And it's tough sometimes. And as you know, I'm speaking with a group of influential women. We've all been in that situation where it would be so much easier to just sit back and be quiet, and just to let the status quo roll over our heads and to just be quiet. But those days are done. We have to use our voice. We have to dig deep and stand up for what we believe in. And it's challenging and it's hard work, but it's so important. And that's where that sort of network is so important, that you can fall back on a group of women that you trust that can help give you that confidence and that courage. But again, I just think that it's incredibly important to look for candidates who are willing to speak up and follow their own intuition.
So I just want to ask, what was the toughest thing you had to do?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I did speak up in July about my own viewpoints on the residential schools, and I believe that Canada and all Canadians need to have the courage to really accept our past and to look at the ugliness of systemic racism in this country, and to acknowledge the devastating impacts that that decisions have had on particularly our racialized community and particularly Indigenous Canadians. And so there have been times where I thought, you know what, I'm just going to step outside of the lines and speak my mind. And I did so with confidence, and I'm very happy I did that. It was something that was really heavy on my heart and
important to you. And that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, do any of you have any more questions to wrap things up?
Can I just jump in real quick? So, and I 100% like love everything you just said. You know, and even it's a centralization, it's a decentralization of power, but it's also choosing leaders who you know are willing to hear their cabinet and willing to hear their elected officials. So it kind of goes both ways too, because it's this towing of party policy and lines that actually is probably the most detrimental to the betterment of society, right? Because we elect people of all different places, all different life experiences. They view the world through very different lenses, depending on their life experiences. I mean, if you're going to elect them, and you know, and I've talked about this a lot, you know, like let's not just be putting token people as candidates in places, and we see it happen all the time, and it's kind of sad, right? Because you'll put them in as the token person, but when it comes time for their expertise and their voices and their life experience and their knowledge to be acknowledged to their leadership, sometimes that's where the issue really becomes, because they're not able to really voice it because you have a leader who's maybe unwilling to listen. So it goes both ways, but I 100% appreciate everything you said, Rochelle. It's bang on.
Charlotte, anything?
I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing for families, and I'm always around for conversation what that looks like in my world. But I'm like where you're focused on, super important, and keep doing what you're doing, please.
Aw. And
Thank you.
Aly? Aly?
Yeah, once again, thank you so much. And honestly, this conversation is just, it's made me excited for the future. It's made me excited for your future, for Manitobans' futures, and for women's future just in general. So this is a conversation that I hope keeps happening, not just maybe in the legislature, but also just for individuals. So I couldn't thank you enough. And you're always a big inspiration to me.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all, ladies, for joining us. And Rochelle, it's always been a pleasure. And we're all behind you on this crazy journey and supporting you all the way. And like Charlotte said, there will be a time.
Thank you. Much love to all of you. You're inspiring women, and I'm just really honored to call you all my friends. Thank you.
Thank you.